Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Guile here, and welcome back to our coverage of the Prime Commander Tourney. Pretty damn sensational quarterfinal match yesterday between Luzon and Zlo. Guys, if you haven't already watched it, highly recommend you go over and watch that now. Stop what you're doing, because I'm about to unleash some spoilers. Guys, I cannot have been the only one who thought Luzon was going to break through that match, but it wasn't to be. Go into that deciding match and then the draw onto another deciding match. Turns out it wasn't a map Luzon felt comfortable on, taking nothing away from Zlo, though, who played majestically, managed to bag the win, and completely deserves his place in the semi-final against Ajax. But that is not the match that concerns us today. It's the other semi-final we're about to look at, and that is between Blackheart and Mr. Smith. Blackheart's had a slightly interesting road to the semi from the knockout stages. Because of the way the groups were structured, 4 players had to play an extra knockout game. They were chosen at random to try and make it as fair as possible. Unfortunately for Blackheart, he was one of those players, but of course, being as we are where we are, he sailed through it in fine fashion and now finds himself battling for a place in the final. Now, semi-final format's going to be another best of 3. Those maps are going to be Roanoke's Abyss, High Noon, and should a deciding map be required, that will be Cobalt Valley. So game 1 is underway. Let's go on over to Roanoke's Abyss and see how these guys are going to get on. Now, we know what we're dealing with here in terms of the map. Let's take a look at our players. Up here at the top in the 12 o'clock position, we have none other than Blackheart in fecal brown. Interesting stuff there. I'm not sure whether that's a colour he's sticking with these days or whether it's just the tourney. Anyway, he's opening first land and going Seraphim, going second air there. Pretty solid choice, really. Blackheart playing the percentages on this one. Roanoke's Abyss featuring about as much water as can be found on any other 20-kilometer map. It really is a massive advantage going Seraphim. You've got late game sub-hunters and of course early game Zui Span, that floating T1 artillery that can be so very brutal against your opponents, especially when you send it basically everywhere. It can be really hard to keep tabs on. So there we are. There's Blackheart and his opponent down here in the 6 o'clock position. Mr. Smith going his ever so customary Ferrari red, and Cybran opening first land, second air there. Mr. Smith, an avid Cybran fan. Can't honestly say if I've seen him play any other race in any of the games that I've cast, of which he is featured in many. But he's played on this map many times before, and he feels comfortable rocking Cybran here. So he is going to stick with it, and it looks by the start of things that Blackheart's actually got the more efficient opening on Roanoke. You can see he's got a 3 or 4 mass advantage, and of course it switches to a 2 mass advantage there, but still an advantage, and is just about to complete the final mexes on his main island. If we head down here, you can see there's still a ways to go there for Mr. Smith. One of the mexes still hasn't got an engineer attached to it yet at all, that being queued up. But that is the way it goes, and Roanoke's Abyss such a nightmare as far as I'm concerned for 1v1. Such a huge amount of territory to be concerned with. So many spread out bases, resourcing options that you've got to try and curtail or conquer or keep hold of. And of course not a lot of places where you can freely build intel structures, so a lot of gaps where your opponent can attack through. Anyway, first few air units out on the map. And you've got a Vish T1 transport laden with engineers heading out to the northwestern island there for Blackheart, and a scout plane and a couple of inties leading the way there for Mr. Smith, who's trying to be a little aggressive. We do have a bomber en route. Blackheart has 1 intie in the sky already going chasing after those inties there from Mr. Smith, and he's going to continue to pump out other interceptors, which is good. He's going to need a little bit of air coverage to protect from that bomber. I suspect that bomber beelining actually not for the main base, but instead the northeastern starting location, the base up here, and as yet no engineers being sent over here. Blackheart has sent his ACU in that direction, so unfortunate bit of luck there for Mr. Smith. Like the plan, was hoping to pick off the engineers that have actually been sent out this side. Alas for him, wasn't 2B. That bomber's going to continue on looking for this engineer, which is, of course, heading out here. It's one of the great things about Roanoke's. The paths are pretty predictable generally of what your opponent's going to do, and that also goes for the impending air attack, which Blackheart defends so very nicely there. Interceptor's getting in around the back of that bomber. We do have another bomber on this side of the map, and this time he is in a place to affect some damage. We've got a lot of build capacity on the ground. Picks off the radar to begin with, help to blind Blackheart on this portion of the map, and hopefully allow Mr. Smith to pick off a few more units of build capacity. But ISLs quickly produced will dissuade him from hanging about. Instead, he's going to head on towards these other side islands up here. ACU for Mr. Smith down here on the bottom side of the map moved out to the southwestern location, and he sent engineers to the southeastern location. So almost mirror images of each other this game so far. Taking a quick look at eco, though, it's the one place where it differs, 65 to 41 at current reading. That is a large disparity for only 7 minutes gone in the game. And of course, as we've said it so many times before, eco and reclaim really are two places where Blackheart so consistently excels. And while we're looking at eco, let's take a look at the reclaim figures. Blackheart just breaching 3,000 mass there, 3,100. Mr. Smith on 2,600, so a small lead there already in place. And you can see the Zooey spam well underway. Blackheart with a land factory on this central island here, already sending those artillery pieces south. A rally point seemingly set. Where is it? It's set over here for this other central island. No doubt a staging area for a push on the southwestern starting location down here. But an airdrop with an engineer to the center. Question is Mr. Smith going to move it nice and quickly? No, he's not. Zooey's in play off the edge of the coast there. Quick at destroying that before it can cause any mischief. Now, of course, C being as crucial as it is on Roanoke's, let's take a look at how things stack up on that side of things. Mr. Smith getting really heavily involved in the naval side of things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 T1 naval factories online at the main base. You can already see a collection of frigates dotted around the center of the map. We have a couple heading down from Blackheart, who's sitting currently at 4, a 5th naval factory on the way with 2 more queued up. Mr. Smith not yet moving on to any more, but instead deciding to upgrade one of those 5 naval factories to T2. T2 engineer hastily produced. And he's sticking with that engineer production for now, but look at the lead opening up now. Blackheart on 100 mass per tick, Mr. Smith on 69. This is ruthless efficiency from Blackheart. A little bit of a frigate exchange in the center, and remember there's a tiny hit point advantage for the Seraphim. 2,000 at full health versus 1,900. See that just giving him the edge. Not that it matters, there's a couple of other frigates there for Blackheart show up coming from the northwest. So Blackheart asserting his authority on that part of the ocean, still with a few Zooeys heading on towards this southwestern island now. A few of them potentially about to get picked up by this trident. Some of them might make landfall, and of course that's the one thing about artillery. Don't have to keep it alive for very long for it to inflict pretty significant damage to your eco. It's one of the things I've always called for. Requires a change. It's not artillery, it's mobile suicide mortars. But Mantis quick to respond there from Mr. Smith, dusting those aside, and now he's got a A few more tridents in the area. In fact, we've got a 3-on-3 frigate battle here between Blackheart and Smith. And that's going to keep Mr. Smith's frigates occupied just enough to let a couple more Zuis make their way to that island. Are we finally seeing some T2 naval units being produced? Well, yes, we are. So a Salem nearly finished. It's one of the few maps actually where the Salem doesn't offer an enormous advantage. That, of course, incredible ability it's got to sprout legs and go on land. That's mainly because generally these islands are so small you can reach most of it with destroyers and cruisers anyway. Don't really require the ability for your naval units to become amphibious. But we've got a T2 land factory up here for Blackheart. In fact, a couple of them, and a T2 air factory for that matter. There's the HQ. So Blackheart really making use of this 40 mass advantage he's got now, and he's sending Yenzines, the hover tanks, down to this base of Mr. Smith. Now, of course, Mr. Smith has his ACU in the area, and ACU busy throwing together some static emplacements. But he's soon going to be facing T2 gunships as well. Vulthu's heading his way as we speak, and he's looking a little light when it comes to air power. Most of the air units he's got on the field seem to be scout planes, so I'm not seeing any decent bodies of interceptors. So Mr. Smith could be in for a rough ride here. Not a lot of static anti-air or any on this island at all. May well change as soon as he sees the Vulthus inbound. He'll be feeling pretty comfortable up until this point because of the amount of frigates he's got sitting off his coastline here. That's not going to help him against gunship attack as the second core mass goes down on this starting location. Third and fourth, no doubt, soon to follow. Mr. Smith standing idly by with his comm, wondering what his next move should be. The Yenzines, meanwhile, continue to press on. A couple more mexes Blackheart can take advantage of down here. We've got another land factory spewing out Zuis over on this side as well. And of course, a rally point down there. Decent enough point for another attack to be launched, this time on the southeastern island. But Mr. Smith taking a pummeling from the gunships. Now, there's not a lot of damage coming off those frigates, but when you get enough of them, can potentially ward off a small gunship harass, and that's what they've done. Vulthu's going to stick to this side of the island instead. That one Salem in the middle, of course, adding to the firepower there for Mr. Smith, but these Yenzines could come in and make a bit of a nuisance of themselves. First frigate down for Mr. Smith in that pile. Meanwhile, his ACU still maneuvering out of the danger zone, but this base is all but lost now. Every single structure has been taken down. The last unit, a Mantis, gets popped there by the gunships, and that is now open for Blackheart to take, potentially, as long as he can restrict Mr. Smith in the naval game on this side of things. There's a lot of sea power here now for him. Two Salems in the mix, quite a few frigates as well. And one or two cheeky Yenzines making it into the main base here, and Mr. Smith's power grid under attack. Fortunately for him, a Siren cruiser manages to pick that off before it can do too much damage, but a lovely little Zooey drop at the back there from Blackheart. A couple of volleys, enough to take down that T2 mechs, widening the gap even more between these two guys. 149 now to 67. In comes the Siren to counter him. You should get another couple of shots on the PD. That's if they know it's there. It doesn't look like they actually do. So PD finishes those off without any difficulty. Mr. Smith going to go and bag himself a third T2 PGen. Will be thrilled he managed to keep that one alive. A few more Yenzines posturing for an attack there from Blackheart, but unlikely he's going to get anything done. Meanwhile, over in the southeastern starting location, Zui seem to have done the trick. Only one T1 mechs remains, and Mr. Smith not even bothering to build any T1 units out of these two land factories here. It looks like he's more or less yielding that situation as well. So Mr. Smith not looking in great shape here in the first 17 minutes of this one. His best and only hope rests with causing some problems up here for Blackheart with his navy. But the tech advantage has disappeared. And now seeing some destroyers in the mix from Blackheart. Certainly one at any rate. Another one coming in from the north. But with no cruisers in there, there's nothing to stop the Volthus from going in with the rest of the units. Causing some problems, of course. You don't really want to go in on your own. That's not ideal. Much better coordinated approach there. Slowly but surely the number of naval vessels starts to dwindle for Mr. Smith. So no chance of getting anything done there, I don't think. Cheeky little jester push though, up at the top right, looking to cause some mischief, but unlikely that's going to cause any problems. A couple of interceptors will deal with those without any major difficulty. We do have a skyhook full of build capacity that's heading out. Perhaps this is an attempt from Mr. Smith to re-expand once again. Looks like he's dropping the engineers just off the coast of that southwestern base, which Blackheart has now usurped. Engineers crawling all over it. Last mech's about to be completed. It'd be a bad idea to get a land factory up on that nice and quickly. But 205 to 69. This is getting beyond any measure of a comeback here for Mr. Smith. Hard enough to come back from that kind of situation. That's if you're not playing one of the top players in the game. Blackheart getting an upgrade on his commander. The way the ACU just turns to watch them go past. Like you'd see anything from down there without being able to arch your neck upwards. Couple of Salems heading on to the main base, but Volthus in tow, going after that lead destroyer. They're incredibly tanky things, especially when they've got 42 kills. That is a 4-starred destroyer right there. 10 hit points a second coming back on that thing, and the Volthus can't keep up with the damage that's coming from it, or from them I should say. And Blackheart's main base looking relatively undefended now. No capacity hurries to construct some more T1 land factories. Is that going to be an attempt to counter with more Zui spam, I wonder? Quite possibly. But Blackheart content to eco for a short period here. as we approach 21 minutes. Definitely not pushing quite as hard as he was a moment ago. You just get the feeling that any minute now, the final counter push will be on its way. But that lead, Salem, with 40-odd kills goes down, and the one behind it with 30 joins him at the bottom of the ocean. And now Mr. Smith has pretty significant cause for concern. That's a lot of units heading south now, and the majority of them over here are T2, Yenzines and destroyers. And with all other major strategic locations captured, Mr. Smith's main base, his last refuge, soon to be under assault. He's massing what units he has north of his shipyards there. And he's busy building Corsairs by the looks of things. All Thoods spearhead the attack, going straight after the shipyards. Blackheart even brings in his T2 transports, a little extra damage, but there's surely no way of repelling this. 4 of the 5 naval factories go down, only the T2 remains. Transports chasing a fighter bomber there. Mr. Smith's commander way out down the bottom. All we can do is sit and watch, and out goes the GG. Mr. Smith capitulating to his opponent after 24.5 minutes. And there's the Control K as he bows out of the game. Blackheart hurriedly destroying the remains of his base. Well, that was a pretty comprehensive win there for Blackheart, and if you're Mr. Smith, you're going to be a bit gutted by that. You're facing Blackheart. You know you've got an uphill battle. The first thing you want to do, the most important thing, is to grab that first game and do your absolute best to try and get a leg up on it, because you're not going to get many chances against him. But did he even have half a chance in that one? I certainly didn't see an opening right from the get-go. It seemed that Blackheart was out in front, and there he was determined to stay. But anyway, game 2 is on high noon, and let's go on over to the game zone as these guys are gating in now. And high noon, as I've said before, a very underplayed map, and it's always been one of my favorites. Let's take a look at their locations now. Our players down here, we've got Blackheart. He's going Seraphim once again, and going first air this time, so a little bit of early air harass from him, no doubt. And Mr. Smith up here going Cybrin once again, same colours, and going first land. And Mr. Smith not happy with the map selection. Well, the pools were chosen way in advance, so you could have picked any race you want. Of course, you might be wondering why he doesn't like it. Well, again, slight advantage for Seraphim, being as the high damage T1 floaty naughty units can cross over nice and easily and cause all kinds of problems. So it's not ideal matchup, certainly for him in a 1v1 situation, Cybrin versus Seraphim, but you just got to do what you've got to do. Now, first bomber out in just over a minute. That is a super aggressive start there from Blackheart, only just getting his first mechs online there. Then we've got an engineer coming off that air factory, And that's the order, but that early bomber designed to cripple Mr. Smith and put this match to bed, really, before it's even begun. No spy plane, or scout plane, sorry, to give him, in case he wasn't paying attention, there's a quick commander under attack for Mr. Smith, but yeah, no scout plane to give him any extra intel, so it's all down to the visualization of the bomber there, but that's good anticipation. I love the naming. Dog gets his first kill, that engineer heading north. That will have been 2 or 3 mechs he would have had queued up on that one. And he doesn't have to spend a lot of time in the main base. All he has to do is curtail the expansion of the engineers. Blackheart pausing with that bomber. A little attempt to evade from Mr. Smith is successful. Very nice duke there, but he's never going to get that mechs online without that bomber finishing him off. There he goes. So Mr. Smith keeps him alive for 1 pass, but that's about all he can manage. And now I wouldn't be surprised if we see that bomber head over to the other starting location over here. One engineer busying himself. Well, actually, it looks like he's heading down the bottom. Definitely a mistake. Maybe he's just looking for a better approach. Bomber turning around now. Go over that way. Go over that way. There's an engineer begging for it. But alas, of course, I'm not impartial. Anytime someone is playing Cybran, I have to root against them. It's just the natural order of things. Dog circling. Ideally, he wants to kill off that engineer before he can grab any more mexes. Because that bomber doesn't want to spend all day trying to take down mexes. But very nice micro indeed there from Blackheart. Picks off the engineer. So 2 mexes and potentially a hydrocarbon on that side of the map. Stalled there for Mr. Smith. However, it has taken its toll ever so slightly. This is why you've got to make it pay. If you're going to go early bomber, you've really got to make it pay. Mr. Smith actually ahead of Blackheart on generated mass, 19 to 15. Power is even. And reclaim is, well, it's virtually 0 for both players. 70 reclaim doesn't even factor in at this point. But another engineer is down. Another attempt to grab those mexes at the top of the screen. We do have interceptors out there for Mr. Smith, but we also have a defending one. The question is, has Blackheart allowed that bomber to drift too far away from it? In goes a couple of shots there from Mr. Smith, and he does manage to kill off Dog. Alas, we knew him well. Blackheart's interceptor quick to take revenge. But all in all, it hasn't got him a great deal of distance from his opponent. It seems that he might just be edging ahead now, 23 to 19, but he wouldn't call that a massive victory in the early game there for Blackheart. Hasn't gained him too much ground. Certainly it was a different story back in the day. First bomber used to be devastating, and they made a few changes, made it a bit more expensive, meaning you couldn't get it out quite as quickly without sacrificing a little bit of eco. I think most people will agree that was a another positive change that FAF had made. We've got a few Zuis making their way just off the shoreline from the other starting location on Mr. Smith's side of things, and they're just waiting to take out that NG and those 4 mexes once again. We do have a couple of moles down there, which would help lock them down if there are any ground units around to do so, but Mr. Smith has yet to get any ground forces down there. Probably not expecting, or expecting at some point the Zui attack, but not to know where from. But in the meantime, the 2 ACUs sitting in the channel here, both going to emerge onto Blackheart's side of things now. No doubt Mr. Smith at this point thinking he's got to be aggressive. He's got to do something to force the issue here, because might feel like he's a little bit behind after the early aggression, and he actually is a little bit behind now. So he's picking off those mexes. Won't have done him any favors at all. But of course, Seraphim Commander just that little bit more robust with base health than the Cybran. So Mr. Smith at a disadvantage in this trade as well. Blackheart still well in the green on 8,600, and of course the next shot takes him into the yellow. But Mr. Smith way down on 5,000 with a couple of other units coming in, one of which is a Yenzine. So T2 now on this side of the map for Blackheart. Mr. Smith forced to consider a retreat back into the water. That has not gone well for him. He's lost most of the HP on his comm. That means he's not going to be able to use it very much. And would you look at that, 8 mass per tick, that must be power related. And he already throws out the GG. And that is it. There's the Control K. Unreal. So, in a shock, sudden defeat for Game 2, Blackheart takes the match and moves into the final. And that's a guaranteed $90 there for him. So, congratulations, Blackheart, with a chance to go for the 150 if he's successful in the grand final. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. There's always more to come from me in the future, but in the meantime, stay well and stay safe. This is Guile signing out.